Welcome to Weight Loss and Wellness for Real, the podcast where people like you get the practical solutions and support you need to permanently lose the physical and mental weight so you can feel better and live the life you want in the body and mind you want. If you're looking to overcome your stress eating, overeating, binging behaviors, and move to a place of freedom with food and your body, you're in the right place. Just a reminder that this podcast represents my own opinions. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for educational and informational purposes only. Please consult your doctor or healthcare professional for any individual medical questions you may have. Hello, friends. I hope on the day you are listening to this, you are having a great day. Hopefully you are ready to learn a bit more about your feelings and emotions and how this relates and impacts your current weight relationship with food, with your body. And in this one, I'm going to specifically talk about shame and fear. I'm also sitting outside recording again because it is a beautiful sunny morning and I'm just really working on soaking up as much sunshine as I can, especially as we start to move into shorter days. So you may hear a little background noise, which I guess I'll apologize for, but I guess I'm not going to say sorry too much because this is what I know I need today. And I listened to a couple that I recorded outside previously, and they sounded okay. You hear some of the birds in the cars and my kitties in the background, but overall, I think we'll survive. So we are definitely going to talk about feelings of shame and fear and how working through we're going to talk about how to actually work through these emotions, but also the why working through these emotions is so important for permanent weight loss. But before we do get going with that, I do want to let you all know that starting this week, which this episode is or was released, depending on when you're listening to it, on Monday, September 5th, 2022, I am currently taking new online weight loss clients. That will probably last for a little bit here. I don't always have many openings for my online one-on-one weight loss clients, but I'm opening up a few more spots for this next month. So if you're thinking, that right now is maybe a good time to change some habits and, you are ready to work on losing weight permanently, maybe before the holidays. I always think this is kind of a nice time to work on these things because when the holidays start coming, that can become a really tough time. So, when clients sign up in the fall, we do a lot of work on prepping before the holidays, how to be able to handle the holidays in a way that makes them super enjoyable but without gaining weight, sometimes even still losing weight through them. I guess I personally always like to get started with something new in the fall. Summer's kind of coming to a close. Many of us are more structured with our schedules in the fall. Kids are back to school, et cetera, et cetera. So for many people, it's a good time to focus more on themselves and implement new things to lose the weight for good. My program and how I work with my online weight loss clients is very different than a diet that you follow. In my program, well, if you've been listening to this podcast, you probably have an idea of what my program is like and how I work with my clients. But, it's really based on learning new skills, new ways of thinking, emotion regulation skills, and basically how to, in quotes, eat like a normal person. And this is really what leads to permanent long-term weight loss. It's also what leads to that food freedom, that body freedom, and just really living that life in the body you want to be living it in. So if you've been thinking about working with me, now is definitely the time, as typically openings do not last for long. So go to my website for more details. My website is pretty detailed. That might annoy some people, but I just feel, it's really important to give you a sense of who I am. It's pretty important to know that the coach or therapist that you're working with at least to have some idea like, yeah, this person might be a good match for me. And if you're listening to this podcast, you might have a good idea if we're a good match or not. But if you go to my website and just read through everything, there are lots of details. The prices are all there. Everything's totally upfront. From my website, you can also there's an information form where you can, fill out your name and email and ask any other questions you might have if you need more details than what the website offers, or through that you can let me know if you want me to hold a spot for you to get started. Website is heatherheynen.com. So Heather, HEYNEN.com. Okay, moving on. I wanted to tell you about a company I recently used and that you may be interested in using as well. It is called 5 Strands, 5 the number, and then STRANDS, 5 Strands, and it is a test to learn about food intolerances, environmental intolerances, and it can give you lots of really good information on how your body is currently responding to your diet. So it can identify food or environmental intolerances, and then you can kind of temporarily remove these things from your diet and make lifestyle decisions around that in order to reduce inflammation, to feel a bit better. This isn't about allergy testing. This isn't the same if you were to go get allergy testing through blood. This is simply about a different process they use that help to identify not allergies, but simple intolerances to foods that you currently may be eating and things in your environment. And then once you have that knowledge, the idea is you can go into an elimination diet and take all those things out at once, versus if any of you have done an elimination diet before, when you're trying to figure out what's working for you, what's not, it may be something like you take out all dairy, you have to wait 4 weeks to see how you respond, then you take out another thing, so it's just this really long process of trying to figure those things out. This is just a really quick, simple, easy way to get that information and eliminate all those things at once. And then the idea is you do slowly add them back in once your body, the inflammation has calmed down, your body's ready to respond to them again. So this isn't about eliminating these foods forever and always. It's simply about taking them out for a time period to really optimize your health, maybe even lose some weight, and then slowly adding them back in. And the test is so easy because you just send in some strands of hair, hence the name of the company, 5 Strands. You just send in some hair, you get results back within 5 to 7 days. The other reason I, when asked, agreed to work with this company was because their customer service was so amazing. Any questions you have, anything like that, they are just friendly, very knowledgeable. I just really, really appreciated this to me was like old school customer service. So they're a great company. And this sort of testing can just give you that idea of, okay, these are the things I'm going to try to cut out, and we'll see, trying to optimize feeling good, all that sort of stuff. And my own personal thing with this is I was noticing that I was having just some cues and feedback going on from my body with some regular things I had been eating where I had never had those negative cues and feedback before. And so I knew something was going on, and that's why I got into taking this test. And what was really interesting is some things came back that I knew would come back. Like I've always known dairy. I do not do well with dairy. I know I don't do well with eggs, things like that. But I really found some of the results fascinating. Like there were certain proteins that I was used to eating every single day that I'm highly, right now, currently in my lifestyle, intolerant to, and other proteins that were just fine. So that helped me adjust to what I'm eating right now. Another thing that was really interesting is I always thought I was really intolerant to red wine, but was fine with all clear alcohol like vodka, all that kind of stuff. And Actually, according to this, all clear alcohol is not good, but I am totally cool with red wine. So things like that were really, really fascinating to me, and also just helped me create sort of this elimination diet plan for about 6 weeks that I'll be doing, and just gave me all the information in one shot. So I highly, highly recommend them if you are looking to optimize your health. It's a quick and easy test to just get more information. I really do hope you give it a try. I just believe more knowledge about our bodies and how they are working is such a key in gaining that optimal health. So if you want to give them a try, you can head over to 5strands.com. Again, it's the number 5 and then strands.com. And when you go to check out, put in my name, Heather Heinen, Heynen, and you're going to get a nice discount. Okay, so when we overeat, and remember that overeating is when we are eating more than our body needs to be nourished and healthy. So often, this turns into things like emotional eating or just that habit of overeating. Most of us typically do this to avoid feeling bad, to avoid a feeling or to change a feeling state that we do not want to be feeling. And often we're not even conscious of this. This is why this work is so important, to become conscious of this in order to make those changes. And as I'm sure most of you know, listening to this, when we overeat to change those feeling states, this really does not translate into feeling good. And so really think about that. When you overeat to numb or change a feeling state or step away from an emotion you're experiencing, to distract, to numb out, you may feel a moment of relief in the moment you are consuming, but immediately afterwards, that same feeling returns that you were trying to avoid anyway. But now typically many of us also experience guilt or shame on top of that negative feeling because we overate. So let's talk about shame and fear. Shame is that emotion that brings up, humiliation, embarrassment. We often feel shame very strongly in our bodies. There's lots of those little chemical cocktail packages that go along with shame. Often it can be, some nausea in the stomach. Many of us feel shame within our chest. Many of us will feel like our body temperature is rising when we feel shame. It's usually when we believe or think we have done something immoral or improper. And shame actually does have a purpose. There's a reason we experience shame. And I always think this is important when we talk about emotions so that we don't create this emotion is bad and this emotion is good. But shame, is really what helps us follow the rules for society, to follow laws and to behave in ways so that we can actually be social beings. So we need some of that shame and guilt in order to kind of keep us in check. As human beings, we have this desire, this sort of innate design to belong. Belonging, evolutionary terms, helps us to kind of move forward. We sort of need each other in that. So that's where shame can be helpful, keep us in check as human beings. And fear always comes along with shame. We experience shame because we are fearful of something, afraid of being seen, afraid of being found out, afraid of not belonging, and afraid we're not enough. So both shame and fear go hand in hand. And here's the issue. Shame becomes a huge problem because shame can become deeply internalized. And this is where you start to develop super critical self-talk that is really, really harsh. And then through this self-talk, you have a belief that you are worthless, that you have no value. But really, however deep shame exists for you, it really usually has very little to do with what you have actually done wrong. That deep, deep shame typically does not necessarily correlate to something that you have done horribly wrong. So, okay, are you experiencing shame? Here are some hints I'm going to give you a list of them. So I want you to listen carefully. And if you find yourself in any of these sort of hints that I give, and you have a goal of weight loss, but just can't get it off or keep it off, then doing some emotional work around shame is probably going to be key for you to finally drop the weight. Okay, so do you feel very sensitive often? Do you get your feelings hurt easily? Do you feel unappreciated? Do you feel used? Do you feel rejected? Do you feel like you have no impact? Do you feel worried often about what others think of you? Do you have thoughts like no one respects me? Do you have feelings that others take advantage of you all the time? Do you always need to have the last word? So like if you're in a conflict or an argument or discussion, do you always have that sort of urgy impulse to have the last word? Are you never vulnerable? Can you never share your thoughts and feelings with others? Do you find yourself wanting to shut others out or withdraw? Those are some of the clues that you might be experiencing some deep shame. And here are some behaviors that often show up when deep shame is present. And this is just in the physical body. And this is often, not always, but things like slumping shoulders, a head hanging low, often feeling frozen or unable to move, using an overly soft voice, and also difficulty being spontaneous. And there are often different responses to shame. So many of us fall into a couple categories of responses when we're feeling shame. One is lashing out in anger, and this is usually impulsive and feels a bit uncontrollable. So, you might be the person who experiences deep shame, and so you find you lash out in anger a lot. That's like kind of your reaction to everything. Another reaction to shame might be trying to avoid being the center of attention, not sharing thoughts and feelings, never being vulnerable, because concealing yourself is sort of that way of self-protection. And then there are other things like safety behaviors, like always saying sorry or avoiding conflict. That often is a response to shame. Okay, so when it comes to weight loss, if you are trying to hate yourself then we know we are dealing with a core issue of shame. This is why hating on yourself, berating yourself to get yourself to follow your diet never, ever works for the long term. It's like having a super, super harsh or abusive parent telling you all the time, you're horrible, you're fat, you're dumb, etc., to try to keep you in line, to try to get you to behave. And you may behave for a bit, but over time, you are going to rebel. You are going to overeat. You will get completely passive and overeat in secret whenever you get the chance, right? Both are sort of these forms of rebelling. So hating yourself thin is based on that. When you do this to yourself, you're thinking, I have to hate on myself. I have to be harsh because, this means I mean business. And if you're hard enough on yourself, you're going to shape up. You're going to get in line. You're going to follow the diet. This is such a lie. It never, ever, ever works. When I work with my clients, I'm helping them learn how their past, things within their current life is contributing to this pattern of feeling shame. Things like parental or caregiver overfocus on food or body, or maybe parents or caregivers who were demanding and controlling. They really set their children up to rebel by making poor choices in the food area and other areas of life. I help clients to process and ease the shame and feelings of low self-worth by helping them learn the life skills that they tend to lack, like emotion regulation and learning skills to help them move into better decision making. And by the way, dealing with deep-seated shame isn't always about how we grew up or how our parents were. That often seems to be, anyway, the clients I work with, what's going on. But, it can come from other things, other adults in our life who said things, made comments, behaved in ways, or if we were traumatized physically, sexually, emotionally by anyone in our life. Sometimes it comes from a relationship that we have had in adult life where, there was emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, all those things can contribute to these patterns of shame. There is one area, those of us who have dealt with shame or are dealing with shame, there's one area we often find ourselves, and it's called the blame shame paradigm. And those of us who are dysregulated eaters, we really tend to organize our thoughts and feelings around blaming and shaming, like the two ends, right? The black and white, the two ends of the continuum, the two polarities, blaming or shaming. And this is that black and white thinking again that we've talked about in lots of past episodes. If you're in this space, you tend to only see two choices, that black and white choice, that either or, two choices. You alternate between blaming others for your unhappiness or blaming yourself, which of course activates the shame. So you kind of ping pong back and forth between these two feeling states, either blaming others or shaming yourself. And this ping ponging back and forth leads or kind of activates to more overeating or emotional eating because there's sort of this need to try to self-regulate in that space. So the way to break this type of thinking, as well as that deeply held shame, is self-compassion and other compassion, being compassionate towards others in response to your unhappiness. So when you start to shift your thoughts away from blaming and shaming, which is a skill, it takes practice, it's totally doable, there's ways to do it. You may still feel negative emotions, but you learn to show mercy to yourself and to others. And this strategy helps us to accept that most people, including ourselves, are doing the best that we can with the information and the skills we have at the time. It really helps neutralize those super strong, dramatic emotions. It helps us be more neutral. And when we are more neutral in our emotions, we are much more willing to make different behavioral decisions around food. Dysregulated eaters have a really difficult time really getting really understanding that using self and body compassion is what will actually get them to their weight loss goal, as well as a healthy relationship with food in their body. But meeting your suffering with kindness, with non-judgment and gentleness is what makes the permanent change, the permanent weight loss. This is how I teach my clients to actually comfort themselves in ways that are comforting to each unique person, how to self-soothe through behaviors as well as our thought patterns, our habits of thinking. So I'm going to give you an example here before we end. Let's say, I have a client who comes to me later today, and more than likely this will happen because it happens almost every day, and tells me that they had a huge binge yesterday. They're in a bad mood, they're feeling hopeless, frustrated, they're feeling ashamed. These feelings and this bad mood really take away any energy to do anything about the binge eating. So this despair, this self-pity, this shame will keep them eating to soothe the distress of these emotions, and typically will set them up for another binge. Now, differently, if they've learned how to do this work and are working on learning how to offer themselves compassion after having binged, if they've built up some self-soothing behaviors, if they've done this, they're going to feel kinder to themselves. They're going to have thoughts, or they're going to at least recognize they are not perfect, but will continue to heal and move forward. Then they feel more self-aware. I want to say more like lighthearted around it, more neutral around it. Some of them can even get to where they feel proud that they know how to comfort themselves during a stressful time or after a stressful time, because after a binge can be very, very stressful. And they also find they have more confidence to continue on in their journey to permanent weight loss. And this creates the willingness. I'm always talking about that feeling of willingness. This creates the feeling of willingness to learn from the binging behavior and how to problem solve it, so that, we're actually moving into this solution-focused strategy to actually make changes to our behavior. So learning a new thinking, feeling pattern of noticing, getting curious, being non-judgmental, getting more neutral, changing our internal self-talk from shaming and blaming to compassion and kindness, it is a skill. It takes understanding of where the blaming, shaming pattern comes from. That's first off. I still believe that's so important to make the permanent change. You really do have to have an understanding and clarity of where this pattern is coming from. Then we learn new skills, and then we practice these new skills and ways of thinking, and there are methods and ways to do this really efficiently. So if you think you're dealing with shame or fear at a deeper level, if you know you have a habit of self-talk that is berating and negative, if you find you swing between blaming and shaming, then you know that this is where you want to put your energy into your weight loss. You really want to learn how to move through this shame and fear. Without this piece, you may be able to take some pounds off for a while, but eventually they will come back on. But more than this, without this work, it not only keeps the weight on, it really deprives you of that food and body freedom and living that life you want to be living in the body you want to be living in. Okay, I hope you learned something useful, and if so, would you please consider sharing it with someone else you think might find it useful or helpful? Anything you can do to post it on social media is super helpful, or even just giving the podcast a review from whatever podcast platform you're listening from. All those things really do help this podcast keep me being able to produce these episodes every week. Okay, thanks so much for being here and sharing this space with me, and we will talk soon. Did you know you can find a lot more help from me on my website? Go to heatherheynen.com. Heynen is spelled Heynen, and get in touch with questions on all things I offer, like online courses for overeating, weight loss, goal attainment, and also my coaching and counseling services.